Welcome everybody. This is the story of baby Olive's skydiving career. At SEFF 2023, I decided to build a parachute for her. If you don't remember baby Olive, she was the one who piloted the MSL-2 last year at SEFF. But this year I decided to build a parachute for her, and we are going to drop her, and we're allowed to go up to 700 feet AGL at this sanctioned event. So I had a bunch of old ripstop fabric and decided to build a 92-ish to 94-inch canopy, which is kind of scale for her. It took about a month to build the parachute and the rig for her. Now, in the past, I have skydived when I was younger, had over 600 jumps, so I kind of had an idea of how to build this rig. But dropping her from the bottom of the airplane was going to be a challenge, which was the Flex Cessna 170. And building the system to open her rig, which was just going to be a pin pulling, and it would open her container. So she would free fall under basically a pilot chute until I would flip the switch and the pin would pull. And the container would, the pilot chute would pull out the drogue chute would pull out the main that was in its own closing bag. I had to 3D print just a basic, pull cable inside baby Olive's stomach with a receiver and a small 4.8 volt battery. I also had the green LED to give me an indication that I actually was powering my receiver, because when I would plug everything together on her stomach and then hide it under her onesie, it was kind of hard to understand what was going on. But basically, this is just the simplicity of the design. So I cut a big hole in her back. Now there's a cable there holding her head up so that she's in the proper skydiving form. But you can see in there my receiver and my servo, excuse me. And essentially it worked flawlessly. I mean, it just worked flawlessly. Now in Fusion 360, I designed the 3D parts to be printed with ABS, and it worked flawlessly. And if you look at the front of baby Olive, I had the two plug wires hanging out that I would, energize the receiver with. And under her onesie there, you could see the green light showing that I did have, in fact, power to my receiver. This pin worked flawlessly, and I was very excited with it. Here we're going to go through me packing the parachute. And if you don't want to watch this, you can fast forward through it, folks, because I wanted to put this in here because I knew people were going to ask. But this is basically me separating out all the fabric between the lines. Now, I never jumped around chutes when I skydived. I always jumped a Triathlon 160, which was a Ram Air parachute, and I 7-cell, and I had a Vector rig. And, I just wanted to, excuse me, I'm sorry, folks, I've got allergies bad, and I don't like editing the crap out of my videos, at least the audio part. But here it's interesting because to build a Ram Air canopy and make it controllable would have taken me a long time. I am going to build one now after this system works so flawlessly. I know there's people doing RC parachutes out there. I don't know how many of them are free falling like I was doing with baby Olive. Maybe there's a lot of people doing it. I don't know. I didn't even research this. I just one night decided I'm going to make this a parachute for her to drop. So this bag here that I put the parachute in worked flawlessly. It fits tight, and I know you're going to see me kind of opening and showing you how this works, and you're going to think, couldn't you have a malfunction here? I had 9 jumps with baby Olive, and all of the openings were flawless. Only 2 of the jumps I had a little bit of line twist, but I'm going to show you the video of that in a little bit. But overall, this system worked flawlessly, and I was really surprised. I don't know if I'm good or lucky, but this system worked flawlessly, folks. And I was just really excited with how repeatable this system worked. But, I tried to make it as close to the way the real parachute that I jumped worked. Now, closing this bag here couldn't be done with rubber bands like I did when I skydived, because I just couldn't find any rubber bands small enough that were also weak enough to let the lines pull out. I did mess around with that idea a little bit, but it to me, it was just way, way too tight in the bag that way. So in a minute, you'll see here how I made the little fabric flaps that are on the back of the container that help stow the suspension lines on the canopy here. And I'll zoom in a minute. But overall, this, and here are those fabric flaps that I'm talking about, because the rubber band system just didn't work. So essentially, folks, what happens is when you look at all these lines, I was just terrified of them tangling as they all came out of the back of the container. So here you'll see these fabric flaps would separate each time I would stow a line. And I was amazed with really how flawlessly the system would come up and down. Now there I was showing the string that I used to close the container, just like the closing loops we would use when I skydived. I was really happy with how well this worked. And so here I'm laying down basically the first set of lines. Then I would lay the suspension lines down like that, and then I would lay another layer of fabric over it. And it's kind of wonky the way I'm trying to do this in video at the same time, because when I would do it at the field, I would have something kind of support her so she wouldn't move around so much. But here you can see I'm laying another layer of fabric over it. Then I'm going to grab the lines again and bring it back over the fabric again. And then bring another piece of fabric up over that. And I would do that all the way until all the suspension lines were stowed. And this worked flawless, folks. I mean, not once did I have an entanglement or anything as the parachute deployed. And I was just really super thrilled with how well this worked. And it looks kind of like a mess, I know, but it worked perfect. Here I've got her fingers getting caught in lines and everything, because when I went to do this video, folks, this video didn't work as well as I'd hoped to show you how this packed. But here's the thing. We were in a hurry at SEFF to get her back up in the air and drop her. So there were times I packed this chute really sloppy. I stowed the lines really sloppy. And, we're just having fun. This wasn't a life or death real jump. I mean, I didn't want her to pancake in and hurt the radio and servo and all of that stuff. But, we were having fun. And to have 9 jumps and not one of them have a malfunction on the parachute side of things was really, really cool. Now, some people said, well, why didn't you have a lot more than 9 jumps? You were there for a week at SEFF. Well, I've got a video coming up on my chuck glider that I bought from Amazon and made a 3-channel glider. And we dropped it from the bottom of the Cessna several times, so there's a video of that coming up. But yeah, this was really cool, folks, the way it worked. So here is the closing loop. And it's going to go through a string that's on top of the bag. And basically what it's doing is just closing the container. But the thing is that there's another loop on the drogue chute line that stows the drogue chute line to the container, so that when she drops out of the airplane, the drogue chute is what's keeping her from falling too fast and keeping her in a stable position as she's free falling. Then when I hit the switch on the radio, that pin pulls and allows the drogue chute then to pull out the entire parachute. And so while this was a little bit complicated to some people that watched me pack it there at SEFF, overall, this was really easy. I mean, it only took me maybe 15 minutes to turn her around as far as packing the parachute and getting her ready to be attached to the airplane. Attaching her to the airplane took probably 3 or 4 minutes. And I had 2 servos on the fuselage that basically just had servo arms. And when the arms were facing up, little loops on the string kept her tightly attached to the bottom of the airplane. And when I'd flip the switch, the servos would turn 180 degrees. and then they would basically let the lines that were holding her to the bottom of the fuselage let go. Now, we did have one malfunction where one of those lines got tangled up on the strut of the wing, and she didn't drop. And when we had to land with her dangling from the airplane, and we drug her and put grass in her pacifier in her face, and it wasn't pretty. But the way we remedied that was we ended up making the support lines go behind the wing struts, and that way they couldn't foul up when we dropped her. But here I'm closing the bag, and I'm going to take the, first of all, this loop right here I'm showing you, this loop that I'm going through with the string right now is the one that supports her in free fall. So that right there is under the last flap. And then I go through this last flap, and then that way she's held by the drogue chute in free fall. And the drogue chute did not work, and you'll see in some video in a minute, it didn't work right as far as stability, because it made, at first I built a parachute that didn't have a hole in the top or any vents in it. And I knew that was a bad mistake, because I've built a lot of parachutes in my life for rocketry and stuff. So I knew it would not be stable, but I just wanted to kind of see what would happen. And while I was there, I started cutting more and more vents in the drogue chute, which ultimately gave her a lot more stable free fall. Now, of course, she's creating turbulence, but see, there she is supported, and all that pin's got to do is pop out, and then that drogue chute's going to pull out her main. It's really just that simple, folks. So, there's not really anything to malfunction here unless the radio for some reason didn't pull the pin. And I'm not sure if that drogue chute would slow her down enough not to hurt anything inside her gut. So here you're going to see basically, imagine the drogue chutes, flailing in the air. I flip the switch, the container opens, the bag pulls all the lines out without any entanglements, which was really kick-ass. And right here, it looks like the bag is kind of stuck on the canopy when I pull on it, but the opening forces always pull the bag right off, and sometimes most of the time pull the bag off before all the lines were extended. So that's how that worked, and it was really, really cool, folks. I was really excited with it. So now we're going to start getting into the jumps. So this was the first drop from the bottom of the Cessna, and this is one of the drone pilots trying to stay caught up with the airplane, and it worked flawless, folks. I mean, now this one was a little bit of a sketchy drop because my drone pilot had never tried to follow a parachute down. Still did an excellent job. It was really weird trying to follow a chute down. Now this is the deployment of the chute. You notice there the bag, the closing bag absolutely pulled out before the canopy had even pulled the lines out of the container. And what's really neat here, folks, is that there is no line twist there at all. I was just amazed how many of these jumps. I think out of all the jumps, there's only 2 that had noticeable line twists. Now, she swings around here a little bit or rotates around, but there was 0 line twist there at that canopy opening, which I thought was really cool. And then we have the next drop. Now, not all 9 jumps got caught on video. Now, this was drop number 2. And, you notice there's some vents in the drogue, and she's not quite pivoting around as bad, but she's still pivoting around a lot. And I had to cut more vent holes in the drogue chute canopy. This was a really low opening, and right there, the drone flew right into the lines. Now, my drone pilot, Eamonn, is such an expert. He killed the throttles right as he knew he was going to hit the canopy, and it didn't hurt the chute, didn't hurt the drone. Nobody was injured in this jump. But watch the deployment right here. See, the bag's already pulled off the canopy there. And now the canopy is coming out. This was a really low pull, folks. We were just kind of seeing how low we could go to open her canopy. And the canopy did fully inflate before she hit the ground. She's about 5 feet off the ground when the chute completely opened. But right here, my buddy Eamonn knew that this was an oh crap moment because he knew he was going to hit the lift lines. And nothing was hurt. I don't mean lift lines, folks. I'm sorry. That's a term from my industry of rigging the suspension lines of the canopy. And this jump, was another, I mean, all of these jumps, folks, was absolutely hilarious. I mean, it was so cool. Now, you notice I've got more vents in her drogue here, and she's not swinging around as much. And there on the opening, it had line twist, but she immediately unwinded. And it was so hilarious watching her fall off the bottom of the airplane and free fall, folks. It was really, really cool. Now here, and I'm going to do this in slow motion in a minute, but the traffic pattern was kind of full, and we dropped her right down in the middle. And, you know, we would always yell, you know, that we were in the air. But here's one of the weird things. We were always trying to yell when we were dropping her, but we were so focused on the drones following her and her free falling that sometimes we did free fall right down into the traffic pattern, which at SEFF, nobody cared. I think we had something like 6 mid-airs this year, but, and I know people are going to go, mid-airs, that's unsafe. Yeah, you'd have to come to SEFF and understand just the way it works there, folks. But all these openings were just really kick-ass. I mean, I was so excited with the way the chute worked. But I want you to notice right here, a drone almost hits another drone. So watch this drone go right in front of this drone. I'm going to slow it down here. So look how fast that drone right there goes between the chute and the other drone. And that's Mr. X, I think, with his drone going by. And then we've got an airplane coming through here. And he wasn't really nearly as close as it all looked. We all laughed about it. But this is SEFF, folks. I mean, we're just having a blast. But there's not a lot set up yet. So I think this was early in SEFF. I think this might have been Monday or Tuesday at SEFF earlier in the week, because it goes from Monday to Saturday. And, you know, we were jumping all week. Well, we were doing all kinds of crazy things all week. But, you know, I just love slowing this down and, you know, getting that airplane going behind the canopy there. I think it's kind of cool. But I was just so happy, folks, with how well this canopy worked. I'm going to do another round, and I'm also going to do a Ram Air canopy for next year. Now, this jump was really, really cool because watch how close Baby Olive, her drogue, gets to the drone right here. Watch how fast they go right by the drone. I just think this was absolutely spectacular. That was just so cool. And you notice she's still moving around a little bit under the canopy. I don't know if that's turbulence off her body doing that or the drogue chutes vents just weren't symmetrical. But I was really, really happy with how well she was starting to fall. This was another really close opening. She did have a lot of line twist that did unwind before she hit the ground. And here's the deployment. And I'm going to redesign the drogue for next year. But see, you can see the bag pulls right off the canopy before the canopy even pulls completely off her back. So I thought these deployments were just really cool. One reason she tends to bounce under the canopy is I didn't realize all the suspension lines I have do have a little bit of elasticity to them. Here's another drop. We really, I mean, because it's a sanctioned event with the AMA, we could go up to 700 feet at this event, and we never really went much over 700 feet. And that's the drone doing a flip, which I think is kick-ass. And then here is the deployment. She does pitch up and down a little bit while in free fall. And, you know, some of that's just her not being aerodynamic. But see, that bag pulls right off that canopy first, which I don't know if that's good or bad, because I don't want to have a bag lock like in real skydiving, because she doesn't have a reserve. You know, in real skydiving, you have a reserve. If you have a bag lock, you just do a cutaway and then you go for your reserve. But there's no way to cut away her main canopy, which might be kind of cool for next year. Maybe I should design a way to cut away and have a reserve. This was a bad takeoff accidentally. The plane accelerated too much, and she slid back and it drug her face down the runway. So she was crammed up against the bottom of the airplane here. And but this is a really neat release right here. And you can see the drogue gets pulled out of the bottom of the plane. I 3D printed a little holder that I cut a hole in the bottom of the Cessna, and the drogue was tucked up into the belly of the Cessna. And every time she came out, it pulled out of the bottom of the Cessna perfect. I mean, every time it worked perfect. And then here she is in free fall. And my buddy Eamonn, the drone pilot, and Mr. X, the other drone pilot, they are really, really, really good. And I have used Mr. X because he's kind of a big wig in life, and I don't want to use his name in videos. He's not Elon Musk, but he's a big wig guy, Mr. X. Now, when she landed, she did tangle in her line sometimes, and that's one reason I made that her suspension lines could be connected off her harness, and I could untangle it. Same thing with real skydiving. If you ever dropped your container through your suspension lines and got it tangled, you'd have to disconnect your 3-ring. I thought this was a really cool deployment. You can see the other drone, Mr. X's drone, behind the canopy. But I thought this was just a spectacular opening. She had about 45 degrees of line twist that immediately unwound there. But overall, this was just incredible. So I have a series of stills to show you, and they were taken by Lee Ray with the AMA, and they are excellent, excellent pictures. And basically, he was on the ground, and I asked him if he could get some free fall pictures from the ground, and they looked really cool, folks. I was really excited with how these turned out. And it's hilarious what she looked like from the ground, being taken from, a still camera. And Lee did such a great job getting these really crisp and fresh. This is a cool picture he got of the canopy deploying with the drone following her down. I thought this was excellent. And then here's just another picture of her under her canopy. And I'm going to make her so that her body swings into a landing position next year. But that's it, folks. This was a story of Baby Olive and her skydiving career at SEFF 2023. Rock on, and I'll talk to you next time. And be safe and go flying.